The smell of Santa Monica saltwater mixed with sunscreen and the sound of a dying woman's heartbeat under Lucas Hayes's hands. 30 seconds ago, he was just a single dad teaching his son to build sandcastles. Now his knees sank deep into hot sand, hands pressing against a stranger's chest, while 8-year-old Caleb called 911 with a trembling voice. "Breathe," Lucas whispered, unsure if he was talking to the girl or himself. "Don't die." Not today. When her blue eyes snapped open and looked straight into his, Lucas felt something in his own chest come back to life. Something that had died with Jennifer 4 years ago. He didn't know the woman he'd just saved could buy this entire beach with pocket change. He didn't know she was escaping a world where love was measured only by bank account numbers, and he certainly didn't know that saving her life would teach his dead heart how to beat again. "Thank you," she whispered. 2 simple words that would change everything. The morning had started like any other Sunday at the Hayes household. Lucas made coffee in Jennifer's favorite blue mug with the faded sunflower pattern, still making 2 cups out of habit, though the second always grew cold. Caleb wandered in wearing dinosaur pajamas, clutching his latest shell discovery. "Dad, can we go to the beach today?" "I want to find more shells," Caleb asked. The boy had been obsessed with marine life since Jennifer bought him that ocean book during her final months. Lucas looked out at the perfect California weather. The garage could wait 1 more day. An hour later, they were at Sunset Cove, a quieter section of Santa Monica Beach. Lucas set up their simple beach setup, while Caleb ran ahead, scanning for treasures. As he arranged their towels and unpacked Jennifer's thermos, he noticed a woman sitting alone about 50 yards away, reading what looked like a thick report. The afternoon progressed peacefully. Lucas helped Caleb build an elaborate sand fortress while keeping watchful eyes on the water and surroundings. Old military habits died hard, and fatherhood had only sharpened his protective instincts. He taught Caleb about different shell types and answered endless why questions that 8-year-olds generated effortlessly. Around 3 o'clock, Lucas heard a sound that made his blood run cold. A gasping noise that his military-trained ears recognized as distress. He looked up to see the woman who'd been reading alone suddenly doubled over, papers scattered across sand. Without thinking, Lucas was running toward her, training taking over. The woman was clearly in medical distress, breathing shallow and rapid, one hand clutching her chest. "Mom, can you hear me?" Lucas dropped beside her, quickly assessing. Her lips had a slight blue tinge, eyes wide with panic. Classic cardiac distress signs. "I'm going to help you. Try to stay calm." He turned and shouted to Caleb, who stood frozen by their setup. "Caleb, call 911 right now. Tell them we need an ambulance at Sunset Cove." The boy didn't hesitate. Lucas had drilled emergency procedures countless times, never hoping they'd need them, but knowing preparation could mean life or death. Her breathing became more labored as she began losing consciousness. Lucas checked for a pulse, found it weak and irregular. This wasn't panic or heat exhaustion. This was genuine emergency, and they were 10 minutes from professional help. He positioned his hands on her chest, remembering military medical training and refresher courses he'd taken since becoming a father. "Stay with me," he whispered, beginning chest compressions. The woman's eyes fluttered, then focused on his face with startling clarity. Even distressed, he noticed they were unusual blue-gray, like storm clouds over ocean. "You're going to be okay. I've got you." The next minutes passed in controlled urgency. Lucas maintained steady compressions while monitoring breathing, occasionally providing rescue breaths. In his peripheral awareness, he heard Caleb talking to emergency dispatch, his young voice remarkably steady as he provided location details. Her condition stabilized under his care, breathing becoming more regular, though still labored. Her eyes opened again, staying focused on his face with intensity that caught him off guard. There was something beyond gratitude in her expression, a kind of wonder that seemed disproportionate. When paramedics arrived, they found Lucas still maintaining position, one hand monitoring pulse while the other supported her head. The lead paramedic nodded approvingly at Lucas's intervention. "Good work. Looks like you kept her stable." As they prepared to transfer her, the woman reached out and grasped his hand with surprising strength. "Thank you," she whispered, barely audible over waves and ambulance engine. Her eyes spoke volumes beyond words. There was something about how she looked at him, as if seeing him for the first time, or perhaps seeing something he didn't recognize in himself. As the ambulance drove away, Lucas stood on beach with Caleb, both processing what had happened. The boy was full of questions and excitement, proud he'd remembered emergency training. That evening, eating pizza and watching sunset, Caleb couldn't stop talking about their adventure. "Dad, do you think she's okay? Will we see her again?" 3 days later, Lucas was under a Chevy's hood when Caleb came running from the office. "Dad!" "There's a lady here to see you." But when Lucas walked to the garage front, he stopped short. Standing beside Caleb was the woman from the beach, looking remarkably different composed, healthy, wearing simple jeans and white blouse that somehow managed to look both casual and elegant. "I wanted to thank you properly," she said, extending her hand. "I'm Ray Collins. I realize we weren't exactly introduced under best circumstances." Her handshake was firm and warm, though Lucas noticed her hands were softer than expected for someone claiming to work with them. "Lucas Hayes, this is my son Caleb. How are you feeling?" She smiled at Caleb, who was practically bouncing with curiosity and pride. "Much better, thanks to both of you," Ray said, crouching to Caleb's eye level. "Your dad is a hero, you know, and so are you for calling help so quickly." As they talked, Lucas found himself studying Ray more carefully. Mid-30s, shoulder-length brown hair, those same striking blue-gray eyes. Something about her bearing suggested confidence and intelligence, but also wariness he couldn't identify. She seemed comfortable with Caleb, but when looking at Lucas, there was slight tension, as if carefully weighing words. "I was hoping I could take you both to dinner," Ray said. "It's the least I can do." Lucas hesitated. Accepting favors from strangers made him uncomfortable. But Caleb's enthusiasm was infectious, and it had been months since they'd eaten anywhere other than their kitchen table. That Friday evening found them at Romano's, a family-owned Italian restaurant. Ray proved an excellent conversationalist, drawing Caleb out with questions about school and shell collection while showing genuine interest in Lucas's garage stories. She asked informed questions about engines that surprised him with their sophistication. "You seem to know quite a bit about automotive work," Lucas observed. Ray paused momentarily before explaining she'd always been interested in how things worked, mentioning engineering study before switching to graphic design, explaining both her technical knowledge and current freelance career. The only odd moment came when Ray's phone rang during dessert. She glanced at the screen, expression tightening almost imperceptibly before declining the call. "Sorry. Work can be demanding sometimes, even Friday nights." Lucas found it curious that freelance graphic design would have such urgent calls, but everyone's situation was different. Over following weeks, Ray became a regular presence in small but meaningful ways. She stopped by the garage occasionally with minor car troubles that Lucas suspected were more excuse than necessity. Her Honda Civic seemed too well-maintained for the frequent attention she claimed it needed. But he didn't mind visits, and Caleb always brightened seeing her coming. Ray had talent for connecting with Caleb without talking down to him. She brought marine biology books, helped organize his shell collection with systematic approach, and listened to endless questions with genuine patience. Lucas began looking forward to her visits almost as much as his son did. There were small things about Ray that didn't add up. Her clothes were simple, but seemed higher quality than most casual wear. She tipped service workers with generosity, suggesting money wasn't primary concern, yet claimed to be struggling freelance designer. Her hands remained conspicuously soft, despite claimed interest in hands-on work. Most telling was her reaction to phone calls. Twice during garage visits, her phone rang with urgent calls she either declined or stepped away to take privately. Once, Lucas overheard fragments sounding more like high-level business than graphic design. When asked casually, Ray explained she occasionally consulted on marketing projects requiring formal communication. The turning point came on a Tuesday afternoon. Ray had stopped by ostensibly to check engine noise Lucas suspected existed only in imagination. While he performed cursory inspection revealing nothing wrong, she sat with Caleb helping with Ocean Conservation School project. Lucas was finishing when he heard Ray's phone ring with familiar, urgent tone. This time she answered immediately, voice taking on crisp, authoritative quality completely different from usual warm casualness. "I told you to handle this without involving me," she said sharply, walking toward garage back. But acoustics carried sound unexpectedly, and Lucas heard fragments making no sense for freelance design. Words like board meeting, quarterly projections, and media statement filtered back, along with numbers seeming too large for design fees. Most unsettling was command tone, as if she were used to having directives followed without question. When she returned minutes later, demeanor had shifted back to usual warmth, but Lucas noticed tension around her eyes. "Sorry about that. Big client, demanding timeline." But Lucas was beginning to suspect he didn't understand the situation at all. That evening, watching news with Caleb, Lucas's attention was caught by business report about medical technology companies. One woman in particular caught his attention, bearing striking resemblance to Ray, though hair was styled differently, and she wore expensive business attire. The resemblance was unsettling, but not conclusive. Lucas told himself he was being paranoid, that stress was making him see connections that didn't exist, but he couldn't shake feeling something important was happening just outside his understanding. The next morning brought an answer he wasn't prepared for. His friend Brandon burst into the garage holding his tablet with excitement mixed with concern. "Lucas, you need to see this. I recognize something about that CEO from last night's news. The article was from a business publication featuring detailed profile of Rachel Steinberg, 35-year-old CEO of Steinberg Medical Technologies." The photo showed a woman in expensive suit standing in modern office, but her face was unmistakably familiar. With professional styling and corporate attire, she looked different enough that Lucas might not have connected them alone. But bone structure, distinctive blue-gray eyes, and something indefinable about expression left no doubt. Ray Collins was Rachel Steinberg, worth approximately $2.7 billion. Lucas stared at the article, mind struggling to reconcile this information with the woman who'd been helping his son with homework. According to details, she'd inherited the company from her grandfather at 28 and transformed it into leading cardiac care technology developer. Her innovations had saved thousands of lives and earned recognition as one of most influential young business leaders. "This doesn't make sense," Lucas said, though pieces of a puzzle he hadn't realized he was solving began falling into place. Ray's engineering knowledge, expensive clothes disguised as casual wear, authoritative phone conversations, generous tipping without thinking about money, all suddenly made perfect sense for someone worth billions. The question is, what's a billionaire CEO doing pretending to be struggling graphic designer and hanging around your garage? Brandon asked. The implications hit Lucas like a physical blow. For weeks, he'd been believing someone might genuinely care about him and Caleb without ulterior motives. The possibility their entire relationship was built on deception felt like betrayal cutting deeper than expected. "I need to talk to her," Lucas said finally. "I need to understand what this is really about." That afternoon, Lucas found himself outside the address Ray had given for her apartment, holding the article like evidence in a trial he wasn't sure he wanted to prosecute. When Ray opened the door, her face went through expressions telling him she immediately understood why he was there. Surprise, resignation, and what might have been relief flitted across features before settling into sad acceptance. "You found out," she said simply, stepping aside to let him enter. I wondered how long it would take. The apartment interior was carefully modest, furnished suggesting comfort without luxury, but Lucas noticed details betraying fiction. High-end electronics disguised as basic models, artwork looking original despite unassuming frames, coffee machine probably costing more than most people's rent. "Rachel Steinberg," Lucas said, holding up the article. $2.7 billion, Chief Executive Officer of Steinberg Medical Technologies. That's who you really are. The question is, what the hell are you doing with me and my son? What kind of game is this? Rachel sat heavily on her couch, and for first time since he'd known her, she looked genuinely vulnerable. The careful composure she'd maintained as Ray Collins seemed to crumble, revealing someone who looked tired and lost in ways wealth clearly couldn't fix. "It wasn't supposed to be a game," she said quietly. "It was supposed to be a break. A chance to be normal for a while." Normal. Lucas's voice carried anger edge. "You call lying to people normal? Pretending to be someone you're not? I trusted you. I let you into my son's life. And this whole time you've been, what? Slumming with the poor mechanic for entertainment?" "No!" Rachel stood quickly, eyes flashing with genuine pain. "It was never like that." "Lucas, you have to believe me. Meeting you, getting to know you and Caleb, it's been the most real thing in my life in years, maybe ever." She moved toward him, stopped when she saw him step back. "I know how this looks. I know you have every right to be angry, but my feelings for you, for both of you, those were never fake. 4 months, Lucas said, voice quieter but no less intense. 4 months of lies. Every conversation, every dinner, every time you helped Caleb with homework, all built on a lie. The person I am with you and Caleb, that's real," Rachel insisted. "The money, the company, the public life, that's what feels fake. Do you know what it's like to never know if people care about you or your bank account? To have every relationship filtered through what you can do for someone else? When you saved my life on that beach, you didn't know who I was. You just saw someone who needed help, and you helped. Do you have any idea how rare that is in my world?" The explanation made emotional sense, and Lucas could understand anonymity's appeal for someone whose wealth made genuine relationships nearly impossible. But understanding her motivations didn't make betrayal sting less. "So what happens now?" Do you disappear back to your real life? Expect us to pretend this never happened? I don't know, Rachel admitted, helplessness in her voice more convincing than any argument. I never planned for this to go on so long. I never planned to care about you the way I do. When I first came to your garage, it really was just to say thank you. But then I met Caleb, and I saw how you were with him, and I couldn't bring myself to walk away. Lucas found himself thinking about Caleb, who would expect to see Ray at the garage as usual. The boy had grown attached in ways going beyond simple fondness. He'd started drawing pictures including her in their family, talking about her as permanent fixture. How could Lucas explain that the woman Caleb saw as mother figure was actually a billionaire who'd been pretending? Caleb doesn't know, Lucas said. Rachel shook her head, looking miserable. He thinks you're Ray Collins, graphic designer who likes marine biology. How am I supposed to tell him that was all a lie? It doesn't have to be a lie, Rachel said desperately. The person you know, the person Caleb knows, that's who I want to be. The money doesn't have to matter. But even as she said it, Lucas could see she knew how impossible that would be. Billionaires didn't simply disappear from responsibilities. You can't just walk away from being Rachel Steinberg, Lucas said, and I can't build a relationship with someone who doesn't exist. Ray Collins was fiction. Beautiful fiction, maybe, but still fiction. I need you to stay away from us, from Caleb especially. He's already lost one mother. I won't let him lose another to a lie. Lucas, please. Rachel started, but he was already moving towards the door. Give me a chance to explain to him. But Lucas was shaking his head, protective instincts taking over completely. He's 8 years old. He doesn't need to understand billion-dollar deceptions. He needs stability and honesty, and you can't give him either. That evening was one of hardest Lucas had experienced since Jennifer's death. Caleb's confusion and hurt at Ray's sudden absence was heartbreaking, made worse by Lucas's inability to provide satisfactory explanation. Did we do something wrong? Is Ray mad at us? Caleb asked repeatedly, trying to find logic in adult situation-defying simple explanations. Sometimes people have to leave, Lucas said finally, falling back on inadequate words he'd used explaining Jennifer's death. It doesn't mean they don't care about us. It just means their life is different from ours. But Caleb wasn't buying the explanation any more than when Lucas had tried explaining why Mommy couldn't come home from hospital. A week after confronting Rachel, Lucas was surprised to find an envelope under the garage door. Inside was a letter in Rachel's handwriting, along with legal documents. The letter explained she was establishing a foundation for cardiac care research and emergency response training, called the Jennifer Hayes Foundation. Legal documents showed substantial personal wealth funding, with Lucas named as board director if he chose to accept. I know you don't want to see me or hear from me, the letter read. But I couldn't leave without doing something to honor the woman whose memory you carry so beautifully and the man who taught me what real courage looks like. The foundation will provide free CPR training and emergency medical equipment to communities that can't afford them. Please don't reject this because of anger at me. Jennifer's name on this foundation will mean her life had meaning beyond the love she gave you and Caleb. Lucas read the letter 3 times before processing what Rachel was offering. The foundation would be substantial enough to make real difference in emergency medical care. But naming it after Jennifer felt both honorable and presumptuous, simultaneously thoughtful and intrusive. That evening, helping Caleb with homework, the boy made an observation cutting straight to Lucas's dilemma. Dad, I miss Ray. But I was thinking about what she taught me about shells and ocean animals. Even if she can't visit anymore, those things are still real, right? She still really taught me those things. The innocent wisdom in Caleb's question forced Lucas to confront something he'd been avoiding. The time Rachel had spent with them, care she'd shown Caleb, laughter they'd shared. Those experiences had been real, regardless of surrounding deception. Ray Collins might have been fiction, but the woman who'd listened patiently to Caleb's questions and helped him feel valued, that person had been genuine. 2 weeks after receiving Rachel's letter, Lucas made a decision that surprised him. He called the number she'd included and left a message saying he would accept the foundation board position, but wanted to meet to discuss terms. When she called back, her voice carried hope and caution, suggesting she understood this wasn't reconciliation, but willingness to work together for something larger than their personal conflict. They met at a Santa Monica coffee shop, neutral territory allowing them to talk without emotional weight of either home. Rachel looked different again, wearing simple clothes, seeming more natural than Ray Collins's careful casualness, but less polished than her corporate attire. She seemed to be finding her way toward whoever she actually was underneath various roles. "I want to be clear," Lucas said before ordering coffee. "This isn't about forgiveness, and it's not about getting back together. This is about honoring Jennifer's memory and doing something good with your resources. But if we're going to work together, there can't be more lies, no more fiction, no more careful omissions. If you can't handle that honesty level, we should walk away now." Rachel nodded, prepared for exactly this conversation. "I understand, and you're right to insist on that. I've spent so many years protecting myself with deception that I'd forgotten what honesty felt like." She looked directly at him, and he saw something reminding him of the woman he'd saved on beach, vulnerable and real in ways transcending wealth or social position. "Ask me anything. I'll tell you truth, even if it makes you think less of me." The conversation that followed was unlike any Lucas had experienced. Rachel told him about growing up as business empire heir, never knowing if people liked her for herself or what she represented. She described wealth's isolation, how money created barriers between her and genuine human connection, exhaustion of always wondering about people's motives. "When you saved my life that day, you looked at me like I was just a person who needed help." Rachel said quietly. "No one had looked at me that way in years. Maybe ever. And when I came to thank you and met Caleb, I saw what real family looked like. The way you two cared for each other, the way you'd built something meaningful despite losing Jennifer. It was everything I'd never had." The foundation work gave them structure for rebuilding trust while maintaining appropriate boundaries. Rachel's business acumen and resources combined with Lucas's practical experience created partnership that was both effective and surprisingly satisfying. They focused on establishing CPR training programs in underserved communities and providing emergency medical equipment to schools. Working together allowed Lucas to see Rachel as she actually was, rather than either Ray Collins' fiction or intimidating billionaire figure. She was intelligent and driven, but capable of admitting mistakes and learning from criticism. She listened to his ideas with genuine respect and incorporated feedback showing she valued his expertise. Caleb's reaction to learning truth about Rachel was typically direct and pragmatic. "So Ray was really Rachel all along, and she's super rich but pretended not to be because she wanted to be friends with us?" When Lucas confirmed this simplified but accurate version, Caleb considered it before asking, "Is she still the same person who taught me about starfish?" "Yes. Lucas answered honestly. That part was real. Caleb nodded as if this made perfect sense, then asked if Rachel could still help with science projects, since she was really good at explaining complicated things. Over following months, as the foundation grew and began making measurable community impact, Lucas found his anger at Rachel's deception gradually being replaced by something more complex. He couldn't forget the hurt of discovering their relationship was built on lies, but he also couldn't ignore evidence that her feelings for him and Caleb had been genuine. The turning point came 6 months after their confrontation, during a foundation event at Caleb's school. They were demonstrating CPR techniques to students and parents, teaching skills that could genuinely save lives. Lucas watched Rachel interact with children, answering questions with patience and enthusiasm, and realized this was who she'd been trying to become when she created Ray Collins. Not someone pretending to be normal, but someone learning to be herself outside wealth constraints. After the demonstration, as they packed training equipment, Caleb made an observation surprising both adults. You know what's funny? Rachel is still the same person she was when she was Ray. She just has more money now, but she's still nice and still likes to help people and still thinks my shell collection is cool. Maybe the money part doesn't really matter that much. Lucas looked at Rachel, who was smiling at Caleb with such genuine affection it made his chest tighten with emotions he'd been suppressing. In that moment, he realized his 8-year-old son had understood something taking him months to figure out. Rachel's wealth didn't change who she was as a person any more than Lucas's lack of wealth defined his worth. What mattered was how they treated each other, how they cared for Caleb, and what they built together. That evening, tucking Caleb into bed, the boy asked a question forcing him to confront feelings he'd been avoiding. Dad, do you think you might want to marry Rachel someday? She makes you smile the way Mom used to, and she already loves us like we're her family. The innocent directness took Lucas's breath away, partly because it was unexpected, and partly because it articulated something he'd been feeling, but hadn't allowed himself to acknowledge. It's complicated, buddy, Lucas said finally. Rachel and I have been through difficult things together, and we're still figuring out how to trust each other again. But yes, she does make me happy, and I can see how much she cares about you. Jennifer would have liked her, Caleb said with matter-of-fact certainty children sometimes possessed about impossibly complex adult things. I think Mum would want you to be happy, and she would want me to have someone who could teach me science and help with homework and make really good cookies. The next day, Lucas found himself thinking about Jennifer more clearly than he had in months, not with sharp grief defining first years after her death, but with grateful remembrance acknowledging both their love and reality that life continued after loss. Jennifer had been generous and loving, quick to forgive and slow to judge. She would have been fascinated by Rachel's medical work and impressed by her intelligence. More than that, Jennifer would have wanted Lucas and Caleb to be happy. She'd made him promise, during final weeks when they both knew she was dying, that he wouldn't let grief consume the rest of his life. Love doesn't end when someone dies, she'd told him during one of their last real conversations. It just finds new ways to express itself. Don't be afraid of that when it happens. A week later, Lucas invited Rachel to dinner at their apartment, for the first time since truth had come out. Not as Ray Collins, and not as part of foundation business, but as Rachel Steinberg, someone he was learning to know and care about, despite complicated history between them. She brought ingredients for Caleb's favorite pasta dish and helped him prepare it, while Lucas set the table with Jennifer's good dishes, plates they hadn't used for company in years. The evening felt different from earlier dinners together, marked by careful honesty that hadn't been possible when Rachel was pretending to be someone else. They talked about foundation hopes, concerns about Caleb's upcoming middle school transition, and shared love of old movies that probably bored most people their age. There was still tension between them, moments when past deception weight made conversation difficult. But there was also something new. Possibility of building something real together. As Rachel prepared to leave, she turned to Lucas with expression combining nervousness and determination. "I know I don't have the right to ask this, and I know I've already caused you enough pain," she said carefully. "But I need you to know that these past months, working with you on the foundation and getting to spend time with Caleb, have been the happiest I've ever been. Not because of what we're building professionally, but because of who we are together. I love you, Lucas. I love both of you. And if there's any chance we could find our way to something real together, I'm willing to do whatever it takes to earn that." Lucas felt his heart rate increase, in a way reminding him of the medical emergency that had brought them together. But this time, instead of fear and adrenaline, he felt hope and possibility. "I love you too," he said, surprising himself with how easily the words came. "I've been fighting it for months because I was afraid of being hurt again, afraid of letting Caleb get attached to someone who might leave. But you're not going anywhere, are you?" "Never," Rachel said with intensity, making it sound like a vow. "I've spent my whole life looking for a place to belong, and I found it with you and Caleb. I'm not going to walk away from that. Not again." When she kissed him, it felt like coming home after a long journey, like finding something he'd lost without realizing he was looking for it. 6 months later, on a warm Sunday afternoon at the same beach where they'd first met, Lucas and Rachel were married in a small ceremony attended by close friends and family. Caleb served as ring bearer, proudly carrying bands designed to complement rather than replace the wedding ring Lucas still wore in Jennifer's memory. The ceremony was simple, but meaningful, focused on commitment they were making to build life together rather than elaborate displays of wealth or status. The foundation had grown into significant force for emergency medical training and cardiac care research, having already saved dozens of lives through CPR training programs and equipment donations. But more important to Lucas was the family they'd created together, the way Rachel had seamlessly integrated into daily routines while maintaining her own identity and interests. As they exchanged vows on the beach where Lucas had once saved Rachel's life, he realized she had saved his life too, just in a different way. She'd reminded him that his heart was capable of loving again, that family could be formed through choice as well as circumstance, and that the future could hold joy even after devastating loss. When 8-year-old Caleb declared them officially married with authority only children could muster, Lucas felt Jennifer's presence as blessing rather than barrier, foundation for love rather than obstacle to it. The ocean waves that had witnessed their first meeting continued their eternal rhythm as Lucas and Rachel began their life together, carrying lessons that love was worth fighting for, trust was worth rebuilding, and that sometimes the most unexpected rescue could come not from saving someone else's life, but from allowing them to save yours in return.